This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so this is what we were doing yesterday. So again, just to recap, we have a project called 7 class project. We have a couple of work items inside the project. We have assigned ourselves a couple of tasks to go ahead and import, let's say, the .NET Core. So this is done. Even this is done. So I'll just move them to done here. So a lot of tasks out here are already done for me. Now I have also gone ahead and created a build pipeline. So I'll give myself a task called create a build pipeline for .NET Full Framework application. And this is also done. I have also made sure to do this. So I'll just put it as doing. Now there is another task which I want to go ahead and assign to myself, which is create a full framework pipeline or create, let's say, a CI pipeline or a build pipeline for .NET Core application. So this is how we go ahead and assign tasks for each other's guys. So I'll just go ahead and assign this task to myself. And this is what I should be working now. So this is the first thing what we do in an organization is that we go ahead or a scrum master goes ahead and assign all these tasks to us. So we have a lot of tasks out here which we go ahead and pick up or someone goes ahead and assigns to us. So this is something that I'm doing right now. So this is where I am, and also I went ahead, I set up my repository. So I have first repository and I have a couple of branches inside the repository, and I have policies implemented on the branches. And the policies include or the policies require that at least one reviewer or at least one approver should go ahead and review these changes and approve it. There should be work items linked to it. There should be comment resolutions that are done, and there is a mandatory there's a mandatory reviewer out here who's called contributor. So this person who's my lead, I'm imagining that this person is my lead, should come ahead and approve this particular change for me so that I can merge the changes into the develop or the main branch. So in my develop branch, I have got myself the code for .NET Core application, .NET Core demo application out here, and I've also got the code for .NET Full Framework application. And I said that both of them have something called as SLN file in common, which is called as a solution file. But the biggest difference between a .NET Full Framework, just in the form of a folder structure, is that .NET Full Framework would have these files called a web.config file out here, whereas a .NET Core application is going to have something called as appsetting.json file. So it's all JSON file in which we store the configuration for a .NET Core application. So this particular .NET Core application does not have something called as a web.config file. It does not have the .config files out here. And finally, what I did is in yesterday's session, I went ahead and I created myself a first pipeline. That's the reason I went ahead and closed this task. So this task was asking me to go ahead and create a full framework pipeline out here. So if I go into my boards, there is one task which is telling full framework for, I mean, create a build pipeline for full framework. And there is another task which is telling me to create a build pipeline for .NET Core application. So this is done. I am basically closing this out. The full framework is done. So let's go ahead, review this pipeline again. So if I just edit this pipeline, I will be able to see what are all the steps inside the pipeline. And we said that this is called as a stage, and inside the stage we declare important information starting with the name of the pipeline, then the pool of the pipeline, very importantly, like which pool this is running on. So in my case, this is running on a hosted pool, and the agent has a configuration of Windows latest. And in this parameters, I am telling what is the file path that I need to target, which is nothing but .NET Framework / .NET Framework application .sln. This is nothing but the path of the SLN file that I need to target for the .NET Full Framework application. So I went here, I just clicked on the SLN file, I just corrected the path, I just copied the path and I pasted it inside the pipeline. And finally, I'm talking about something called as a drop location. So just give me a second, sorry for that. So I'm now finally talking about something known as a drop location out here, wherein I'm telling what exactly is the drop location, how my or where exactly I am storing the artifact. And in the job, I'm just declaring the name of the job out here. And in the tasks, I'm starting with a NuGet tool installer, wherein I'm going ahead and telling that, okay, fine, please go ahead and download something called NuGet.exe and use that tool in order to first do a restore, then go ahead build the solution. And if you have any test cases with you, go ahead and test it out. Finally, publish the artifacts. Now the symbol path, you can also disable this out. And how do you disable, how do you remove the task? Is that you just have to go on the task, click on this task, it will get highlighted in blue. You can do a right click here. You have disabled, remove, and etc. So I can disable. So this task it can be also disabled, or this can also be removed. So I just removed it out, and you can see save. And while saving, I'll just give a comment that removed unwanted tasks. And as and when I give comment, right, the reason I'm giving comment is that if someone is coming to your pipeline and looking at the history of it, history of the changes, they should be able to understand what you're doing. For example, yesterday I'm saying this is the first run, so I just saved the pipeline and ran it, and I added a pipeline. So this was a add operation. And today in the morning, just about a second ago, about let's say a couple of seconds ago, I went ahead and removed a task which I did not want to, which basically I did not really want a task. So I just removed it out. So it's always a best practice to go ahead and while you're saving your pipeline or while you're basically making any change, it's always a good practice to go ahead and comment things out. So these comments are very, very important. So make sure whenever you make the change or whenever you do that, don't put a blank comment, put something so that you can track it at a later point in time. So any questions till here, guys? Anyone, anything till here? Anyone, any questions still here, guys? Am I good to move ahead? Are you all able to follow this?
Yes.
Okay, so today's work item that I'm working on, or today's work item that I'm focusing on, is the build pipeline that I need to create for a .NET Core application. And in my case, the .NET Core application is in a path like this. So this is my folder. This is the entire code that I have it in the develop branch of my repository. And if I click on this particular folder, this is the solution file path for the .NET Core application, which is .NET Core demo application / demo application.sln. So what I'm going to do is I'll come here and again go to pipelines, and .NET Core needs a different approach than the full framework pipeline. .NET Core restores in a different way than a full pipeline. It behaves in a different it behaves in a different way than the full framework. So I need to go ahead and create one more pipeline to accommodate my .NET Core application. So what do I mean by this is I'll just go ahead, do the same thing what we did yesterday. I'll say new pipeline, And in my case, I am using a classic editor. I'm not creating a pipeline with a language called YAML. We'll look into that as well. But for now, I'm going ahead and creating it in something known as a classic editor. So I'm saying use classic editor here. And as and when this loads, I'll just go ahead and give a couple of details like the name of the repository in which my code is there. Now, in your case, the code can be in GitHub or GitHub Enterprise and etc. It's a similar procedure what you do. But in my case, I stored all my code in the Azure repos. So I'm selecting the team project called 7am class project. This is the project that I'm selecting. This is the repository inside the project and then the branch. So three things what I'm selecting right now in this particular page. And in my case, since the repository is developed, I'll just change it from main to develop and I'll say continue. Now it's telling me what kind of a code do you have right now. And yesterday, if you all remember, I just selected on ASP.NET and I said apply. But today I have to do this a little different. The reason being I am not building or I'm not restoring an ASP.NET full framework application. I am now working with a .NET Core application. So what I'll do is I'll just type in the search window called .NET. So here I just typed in .NET and I have all the tasks that are there for the .NET and I have a template called ASP.NET Core. I'll say apply. This is the only thing that I'm doing right now. So once I said apply, it needs a couple of settings. So let's do one thing. I'll just duplicate this tab and let's open up and compare both the pipelines right now. So I have a .NET Full Framework pipeline here. I'll also edit this out. And in here, please observe the steps. This is going to be a little different for a .NET Core application. So for a .NET Core application, the stage is going to remain the same. Instead of giving it .NET Full Framework, I'll now give the name of the application as .NET Core. Instead of saying full framework, I'm saying it is a core pipeline. And this is since a build pipeline, I'm saying this is a build pipeline out here. And now it's asking me what is the agent pool that you want to go for? Is it a self-hosted agent? Sorry, is it a self-hosted agents or is it a hosted agent? I'll say this is a hosted agent. And in my case, I can now select any of the agents out here. I'm not restricted to only Windows operating system. Reason being, this is a .NET Core application. You can go ahead select Mac. You can go ahead select Ubuntu also. But just for simplicity, I'm just going ahead and selecting the Windows latest image. So I'm saying the operating system or the hosted agent that I need should run on an image called Windows latest. And finally, it's asking me what is the path of the CS project file. Now there are two things out here. If I go into the repository, one is called a .sln file, which is the main file for your code. Like when developers write it, this will become the main file under which you have something called as a .cs proj. Now this .cs proj extension is especially for .NET applications. Even .NET Full Framework would have had this, meaning you can either target the .sln file or either target the .cs project file, or to put it in another way, under one .sln file, you can have multiple .cs project files, meaning you can create multiple projects, multiple .NET projects under one SLN file out here. So SLN file will be the parent under which you can have multiple child projects out here. In my case, I have only one child project, which is .cs proj. So I prefer targeting the .sln file right now to build my application. I'm good with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I'm just clicking upon my SLN file, taking the path, copying this out, going into my pipeline, and instead of .cs project file, I'll just give this path. I'm just telling it as .NET Core demo application and / .NET Core demo application .sln file. This is the path that you need to target. And again, it's just asking you whether if you have any test cases. In my case, I have not written any test cases. We'll also write test cases and see how we can import test cases and everything. But in my case, for now, I did not write any test cases out here. So I'm saying I do not have any test cases. I'll just leave it the way it is. And finally, I come into the agent job. Here I can again say this is code build. And under this, please see what is the difference between the tasks out here. Now for a .NET Core application, I am doing a .NET Core restore. I'm using a task called .NET Core and then executing a command called restore, meaning this is how it's going to look like. This is entirely a template, but you can just add a step here called .NET Core, and this is what has happened. Here you have something called .NET Build. Instead of .NET Build, I have multiple options. I can go ahead and do a restore. This is what the first task is actually doing. The command is called restore. You're doing a restoration on an SLN file or on a path called .NET Core demo application / .NET Core demo .sln. So you're targeting something called as a solution file and you're doing a restoration out here. So I don't need this task. I just added it to just show you all how basically it's done. So for a restore, I use a restore command. For a build, I use a build command. For a publish, I use a publish command out here. So you can change the command out here and you'll get multiple options to do build, restore, and etc. And very importantly, this is the difference between a .NET Core and a full framework. Meaning in a full framework, I was forced to use something known as a NuGet installer and the NuGet restorer. So I'm using a tool called NuGet restore in order to do the restoration of dependencies, meaning .NET Full Framework doesn't have a capability to restore its own dependencies. It needs to rely upon an external tool called NuGet. That's the reason I added this task. But in the case of a full frame or in the case of a core application, .NET SDK, meaning .NET Core application, has a capability to do its own restorations or to handle its own restoration procedures out here. So that's the reason I'm using a .NET Core restoration task out here. And let's see what are all the options that we have here. So once I go inside the .NET Restore task, I have a display name called Restore. You can also just name it as, you can also give it a different name. So I can say it is .NET Core Restore. The command here is restore, and I'm targeting a particular solution file called or a particular path called as .NET Core Demo SLN. And if I go further down, it just says, okay, fine, please go ahead and download all these packages from nuget.org. So .NET will go ahead and download or go into, let's say, a website called nuget.org and download all these packages for you or all these dependencies for you. And finally, or the next task that I do have is called a build. So I can just call this as a .NET Core build. So after restoration, I am just going ahead and I'm saying, okay, fine, please go ahead and build my application. And I am saying the path to build the application is the same path as you restored, which is the .sln file. And please build the application in a configuration called release. What does this really mean? Is that there are two different configurations in which you can build. One is called a release configuration. The other is called a debug configuration. What do they mean out here is that Debug is just going to give you additional logs while building or while basically deploying the application. Debug is going to give you additional logs, meaning this is for debugging, which will help developers to understand what is happening in their code and etc. Whereas a release configuration is clean, meaning this is for production ready applications and etc. So a release configuration does not give you a lot of logs out here. This is a clean build. So in my case, what I'm doing out here is that there is a section called arguments, and I'm passing an additional argument called hyphen hyphen configuration, and I'm just telling the code in which configuration it should get built. And do you see here it has something called dollar open and close brackets build configuration. This is called a variable in Azure DevOps, or this is the declaration of variable in Azure DevOps, meaning this is not the actual value. I'll show where the actual value is declared, but this is how I am declaring a variable in Azure DevOps, meaning this is the declaration syntax. Dollar open and close parenthesis and anything between that, meaning XYZ ABC, will be the actual variable. Meaning where I can declare this out is there is a section called variables out here, just beside the task. This is where I can just go and declare the actual value. And you see you have an actual value called build configuration, and you have a value for it called release. Meaning whenever the pipeline will run, the build configuration, this dollar build configuration value will get changed to release. It will download or it will resolve this variable from this particular section out here. This is what is going to happen while the pipeline is getting executed. Now, what is the advantage of having this is because if you declare a parameter, meaning if you declare a variable in the pipeline, and let's say tomorrow your developer is now coming and telling that he needs additional logs and you want or he wants you to change the build configuration into debug. You don't have to go to each and every task where you declared it. For example, in the second task also I declared it. In the third task also I declared it. And if you have like 20 different tasks out here, you don't have to change this value in each and every task. You just have to come here and change this value in here and just change it to something like debug, and this will take care of everything. So this is for usability and this is for your own convenience out here. That's where I am just declaring a variable. And finally, all these advanced options are not really needed at this point in time. And since I do not have anything to test, I can just remove it out. I can just remove it, and I'm doing a restore, a build, and finally I am executing a task called .NET Publish, wherein I can just call this as .NET Core Publish. I'm using a command called publish, and you have something called publish web projects. Just uncheck this out because in latest versions of .NET this is failing. So just uncheck this out and just target the SLN file directly. So I'm doing a SLN file that I'm targeting the SLN file directly, and I'm also publishing my application in a configuration or in a mode called as release, and I am explicitly telling that hyphen hyphen output is called dollar build dot artifacts staging directory. So I am now giving a variable called dollar build dot artifact staging directory out here. Guys, can anyone tell me what this is? Can anyone make a guess on what this is and why this is needed out here? So there is no right, there is no wrong answers out here. So please try to understand what this is and please let me know what exactly is this.
It's a kind of drop.
It's a kind of drop exactly. So I'm just telling that this is the drop location, and I'm just telling it is artifact staging directory is the output location where you want to basically go ahead and set, meaning in the agent machine that I'm using, there are multiple folders and I'm saying that the output should sit in a folder called A. So I'm just pushing all the compiled code into a folder called A, which is otherwise called as build.artifact staging directory. Now, what is this indication again, guys? It is a dollar open close brackets build.artifact staging directory out here. So what is this indication again? What does this mean if I'm putting a dollar open and close parenthesis? What does this mean, guys? Anyone?
Variable.
So where do I find this variable? If this is a variable, where do I find the value of this particular variable?
In variable section.
In variable section. So let's go into the variable section. And do you all see a variable with the name called build.artifact staging directory out here? Guys, need some inputs.
No.
So then how will my code really get this, or how will this really get built? Is that there is a concept called predefined variables in Azure DevOps. If I just do a Google of Azure DevOps predefined variables, there are a set of variables what Azure DevOps by default defines it for its own self for ease of convenience. So if I copy this called build.artifact staging directory, if I go into predefined variables and if I do an F and if I do a search, which is build.artifact directory variable becomes something like this one. Okay, fine, not a problem. If I do here, it's now giving me a definition called build.artifact staging directory is nothing but the local path on the agent where any artifacts are copied before being pushed into their final destination. The folder is going to be something like this /A. This is important for me. So it's now telling, okay, fine, you can copy all your artifacts here, meaning artifacts in the sense all the compiled code here, so that they can be pushed into a drop location later. And this is now called a predefined variable. And you have a lot of predefined variables like this that you can be directly using in your pipeline without having to declare them explicitly on the variable section. You don't have to declare this explicitly on the variable section. You just have to use them in here and the value will get automatically resolved. The reason being all this is predefined. So please make sure to go through this document. These are called predefined variables in Azure DevOps. And believe me, you'll be using a lot of these again and again. So even in your real-time working environments, you will be using this again and again. You'll be using a lot of variables. You will try to use a lot of predefined variables out there. Reason being they are easy. You don't have to declare them on the pipeline. So less amount of management on us. So now I'm just saying that, okay, fine. It is build.artifact staging directory, which is a predefined variable. Please make sure to just go ahead, take all the compiled artifact, push it into the build.artifact staging directory, and I want you to zip it. This is what I'm telling, that please zip the published projects and add project path folder name to the published path, meaning whatever is the project name, please make sure to create a zip, or please make sure to basically go ahead and create a zip with that particular name. So it says, okay, great, I will do that. And finally, there's a task called publish artifacts. This is where it's going into a path called A folder on the agent machine. And it is basically using this particular folder called drop and pushing the .zip file in here. So this is what I'm doing using a publish artifact out here. So what I'm going to do is I'll just save this out and I'll say this is a first run for .NET Core. and I have now triggered my pipeline right now, and now it's telling okay fine, it's going ahead and now doing a build, and it's going to do the same thing again. The first phase will always be initialize job, where it is going ahead and acquiring an agent from the cloud. It's telling okay fine, the user has requested for a Windows machine, so I'll give him a Windows Server 2019, which is the latest that I have at this point, and this machine will be used as an agent machine. And in the step 2, which is a predefined task again, it's going ahead and doing a checkout, meaning it's going ahead and downloading all the code from the develop branch of my repository into a folder called as S folder on the agent machine. And finally, it will go ahead, it's doing a .NET restore, and it's using a .NET SDK called 5.0. SDK is an abbreviation, or it's, let's say, an acronym for software development kit, which is used, or which is, let's say, a software used by .NET in order to help you restore everything, in order to help you build everything, and etc. So it's using a .NET SDK of 5.0 version. It's going ahead and restoring all my dependencies. So all these are the logs to restore all my dependencies. And once it's restored all the dependencies, or restored all, let's say, the packages out here, it's going ahead and doing a build. And once the build is done, it's going ahead and doing a publish. So I have a publish task, and finally I have the publish artifact task out here. And once the pipeline is run, if I go back and look at this, I have a drop location and I have a .NET Core demo application out here. Meaning this was the name of my project, which is .NET Core demo application.sln. It went ahead and it produced an artifact with a name called .NET Core demo application.zip. The reason it did this is because in my pipeline, if I edit my definition right now, in my pipeline, in the publish task, I went ahead and clicked on this add projects folder name to the publish path. If I don't do this, it won't add the project folder name there. It'll just do a drop.zip. So to make sure that I better identify this, I'm just adding a projects folder name, meaning this is the folder name which is called, or this is the name of the folder which is called demo core application, and it's adding a .zip to it. This is how it's going ahead and identifying this out, guys. So anyone, any questions still here? Anything till here? Is everyone able to follow? Is anyone not able to follow? Please let me know, guys, because I'm deliberately going a bit slow. Reason being, this will be the core what you'll be working on. So please let me know if you have any questions, guys. Anyone, any questions?
Hi, Kiran.
Mhm.
Consider in one SLN solution, we have 4 to 5 CS projects.
Okay,
So my requirement is to target only CS projects rather than targeting SLN. Like,
okay,
what will be the approach
okay.
creating
Good
this
question.
pipeline?
Good question. So the pipeline creation will be the same, but instead of targeting the SLN, let's say you have 4 to 5 CS project files out here, and you want to target a couple of CS project files, which are, let's say, starting with, let's say, first, and it has something like first Ola, or let's say you have CS project files. You are working for a company called Ola, so you have multiple CS project files, each for one particular feature of the application. Like for example, you have a mini feature, so I'll say mini ola.cs proj. You have something called micro ola.cs proj, and you have something called SUV ola.cs proj. So you have multiple CS project files and you want to target files which are only micro and let's say only micro and only mini out here, only these two out here. So instead of giving the entire solution path file, what I'll do is I'll say it is everything starting with M, wildcard, take this out, and I'll say I don't care what this is, but I'll say this is also a wildcard, and I'll say .cs proj file. You can either do this, you can target all starting with M, or you can do one more thing out here. You can do individual restores, meaning you can say unlink this out. I'll say unlink, and in the first task you can do a mini.cs proj. You can restore these dependencies. You can clone this task. So if I do a right click, there's an option called clone, and I can say this is micro.cs proj,
Okay.
and I can build it also in the same way. So I can unlink all these things and I can build it also in the same way, publish it also in the same way, and finally do a publish artifact out here. So where if you have, let's say, like hundreds of CS project files and you do not want to target the solution for obvious reasons, because you will end up building all the CS project files inside the solution. So if I look at the solution file, this is how it's going to look like. So it will tell this is the project grid, and it will tell this is the CS project file, and the number of all the CS project files will get defined out here. That's the reason when I target a solution, I'll end up building all my CS project files. So to avoid this, if you want to target individual CS project files, then this is the path to go for, or this is how you can go for.
Okay, Kiran. We
Okay,
want to
any more questions?
unlink this. We want to unlink this every step, and we need to create. We need to clone the
Your
task.
yes, you can clone the task. Like you can, I what we do is like we just create a couple of tasks. We just clone it out, and we just
Okay.
change the path there. That's it.
Yes. Like, did we come across variables in .NET full framework, Kiran,
Yes,
yesterday?
we also came across in variables in .NET Full Framework also. For example, in the build solution task, there is something known as MS build arguments, which is helping you push your packages into the build.artifact staging directory. So in here also, I said, okay, fine, the configuration is, let's say, the release. So I'm saying the configuration and the platform and the configuration out here. I declared something called as a platform, meaning I'm saying it is any platform, meaning it can be a 64-bit or a 32-bit architecture of your underlying operating system. But the configuration is release, and I'm using this particular variables in here, wherein I'm saying the configuration is this, platform is this, and finally I'm saying a build.artifact staging directory, which is a predefined variable, which is an Azure DevOps predefined variable, which helped you push the package into this particular location and finally publish it out. So yes, we also used this out yesterday too.
Okay, Kiran. Thank you.
Any more questions, guys? Anyone, anything, any more questions here? Okay, so this is great. I went ahead, I am doing, let's say, I did two pipelines right now. One being my .NET build pipeline, I mean the .NET core build pipeline, the other being my .NET full framework build pipeline. I did both of them. I went ahead and built both of them out here. And at the end of each and every build pipeline, I am able to get an artifact produced. I'm able to get an artifact, a set of artifact produced, and I'm just keen or I'm just interested in this particular artifact called .NET full framework. I mean .NET framework application.zip. And in the case of the other build pipeline too, I'm just concerned about or I'm just really interested to look into one particular artifact called zip, which is good enough, but this is good only until my first run. Meaning my requirement right now is something like this. Let's see, where is a diagram? Yes. Now this is all a diagram. So let us make it a little bit uncomplicated. So let me go ahead, get a image of a laptop out here. So I have a developer who is working on a Git branch called, or a Git repository called first repository in a branch called develop branch. And in order to merge his changes into the develop branch is protected, so you cannot do a direct commit on top of this branch directly. So you will need a feature branch for it. So the developer will always and always come using a feature branch. And of course, there are approvals, there are commit resolutions, branch policies, and etc. This is where the developer's job is done. As and when he merges his changes into the develop branch, his job is done right now. This is where our job as DevOps engineers right now begin. So what happens is that, let me go here and let me go into the files and repositories. Let me come as a developer right now. So I am now behaving as a developer, and I'll say new branch. I'll say feature. I'll say .NET Core, and I'm just using a sample work item that is there somewhere, like change the .NET Core code and etc. And I'm creating this out. So now I'm a developer. I know that I need to change this code. So I go here and I go into a simple file here called, let's say, now this one, let's say pages, and let's say index.cshtml, which has, let's say, something like welcome and everything. So I'll just take it out and I'll say this is my .NET application building using Azure DevOps, or build using Azure DevOps. So this is the change that the developer is making right now, and now committing the change. And I'm just saying updated CSHTML, and I'm just putting a comment out here like custom project or something like that. In reality, the developers will make a lot of changes. The developers will be doing these changes every single hour of your kind of project. So there will be a lot of changes coming by a lot of developers. So I'll say commit, and as and when I commit, I'll create a pull request into the develop branch. And now I'm saying into the develop branch, and I'll say create this out. And once, what the developer does out here is that he just goes ahead and sets it to autocomplete, deletes the feature branch once after merging. So this is done. The changes are in here. Like I've set it to autocomplete. All I need right now is the contributor to come and go ahead and give the approval for this. So I'll now come as a contributor. I'll say dev.azure.com, just log into the DevOps portal as a contributor right now, and just go ahead and approve this change out. I'm coming as a contributor right now, and I'll say, okay, fine, let's just give you a password out here. And once I'm inside the project, I will just go to the pull request. By now, I should have also received an email, so I could have come even from my email, or I could have just logged in out here. And I'll just go to the pull request and approve this change. So I am now the lead of the development team. I'm approving the change, and the change is getting merged. The change got merged, and as and when the change will get merged, the branch also got deleted. The change got merged and the branch got deleted. And if you now go into the develop branch, let's go to the branches. And if you now go into the develop branch right now, look at the history. I just merged something just now. So I just updated the CS HTML project and etc. This is where the work of a developer is done. They have written the code, they have made sure to get the approvals. The code is now in the develop branch. Now the developer is asking you as a DevOps engineer to go ahead and trigger a build pipeline. This is where you have configured all your build pipelines, everything is in place. So the developer is coming to you personally or sending an email telling that, hey, you know what? Please go ahead and trigger this build pipeline because my changes are inside the develop branch. I want to see how my changes look like. So I, as a DevOps engineer, now comes here and I say, okay, fine. Since the developer has committed changes and he told me that he's made change to the .NET Core application. So I'll come here and I'll say run pipeline and I'll run this out. Now, if you see, the pipeline is running on the latest commit called updated CS HTML file custom project. So it's taking whatever change that I made and converting those changes also into something known as DLLs or binaries or artifact. So all the changes what the developer is now doing, I'm going ahead as a DevOps engineer and triggering this out. Now the same process repeats again. The developer comes here, he says, okay, fine, you know what, I did one more feature change. I committed this. Can you please do a trigger? I again come here. I again trigger the pipeline once more so that the changes can go further. Now, I said that the developers will work on this very dynamically, meaning the developers are going to work on this over a period of, let's say, I mean, in a day, they're going to do at least like hundreds of commits. And I am not talking just about one developer. I'm talking about now the entire development team. And if your project size is really big, the team of developers will also be very big. So I'm talking about multiple commits, not by a single developer, but by multiple developers, meaning over a day, over a work day of let's say 8 hours, you will be dealing with somewhere around thousands and thousands of commits. And it is not advisable for someone to go here and every time the developer is updating the develop branch, it's not advisable to go ahead and manually trigger this pipeline because this itself is going to take me hours to do. This might look very simple. This might look really very simple to go ahead and run this pipeline here, click on run and do this. But when I'm dealing with a lot of developers who are coming to me at the same time, it looks, or rather, my task becomes very, very, very difficult. So, my intention right now is to automate this process. Meaning, whenever the developer goes ahead and does a feature commit into the develop branch, I need this pipeline to automatically get triggered. I, as a DevOps engineer, shouldn't come here and manually make this change. This is not the intention of DevOps. DevOps is about automation. So, what I am going to do out here is firstly go ahead, add myself a simple work item because any change that needs to be done should be driven by a work item. So I'll say automate the build pipeline procedure. I'll just go ahead and assign this to myself and start working on this. So this is assigned to myself by my project manager or by let's say a scrum master. And once he assigned it to me, I'm going ahead and I'm saying doing. So I'm saying okay fine, I'm doing this out. And what I'll do here is I need to automate my pipelines. So I'll firstly target the core application because that's a very simple thing to do. And I'll just say edit. Once I do an edit, I will be able to see all my pipeline, the tasks, the variables, and etc. In here, I will go into a section called as triggers. All I'm going to do out here is I'll go into triggers and I will say enable continuous integration. That's it. I'm just doing this and I'm saying please include this branch called as a develop branch. That's it. I'm not doing anything out of the box. I'm not doing anything different. I'm just going ahead and clicking this option called continuous integration trigger, and Azure DevOps is going to take all the automation for me right now. And I'll just say save, and I'll say enabled the CI trigger. Save this out. Now what's going to happen is whenever the developer is going to update this branch, I'll say again feature test CI automate build procedure. And whenever the developers, imagine the developer is now coming here, updating the same page again called index.cshtml, and just add some word called version 1. Just as a commit here, and raises a PR into the develop branch. And I'll say create this out, and I'll say set to autocomplete or delete the CI after merging. And once this is done, the contributor is coming here or the reviewer is coming here, giving the approval. And once the approval is done, it's now going ahead and completing the merge, and the merge is now complete. Now, as and when the merge is complete, the pipeline got automatically triggered. It got triggered automatically, and it is now running in the backend. I now did not do anything. Now, this was the earlier commit, which was, let's say, custom project, and then this is this commit to test the CI. And if you look at this, it's telling manually triggered, it's telling manually triggered. Now this is telling an individual CI, meaning no one has manually triggered this out. Rather, this is now automated. This is where, or this is how I automate my pipelines, guys. I haven't done anything. It was just a simple click there, and that's how easy Azure DevOps really is. So it's more like, the buttons that you basically play around with. And I just enabled an option called continuous integration, and this is done. And I can go back to my work item, and I can close this out too. I automated the build pipeline procedure, but this is not done yet. Like, let me get it back, because I just automated the .NET Core. I have not automated the .NET Full Framework application, which we'll be seeing in the Monday's class on how to do that as well. So any questions till here, guys? Anyone, anything till here? Anyone, any questions till here? Okay, if there are no further questions, then I'm going to close, guys. So have a great weekend, and we'll meet on Monday and we'll discuss more on this. Please revise this, whatever we have done till now. Please make sure to practice this out. Please make sure to keep practicing it out, and please let me know if there are any questions. Thank you, guys.